Okay, welcome to episode 49 of Full Circle. I'm Chad, Cheddar Caveman on lots of social media, unless I'm my name on social media like Facebook. We didn't have a show last week because I was busy getting ready to go to War Machine Weekend. Things were pretty hectic around here, so apologies for that. But here we are, returned from War Machine Weekend. I played some games. I don't have anything particularly noteworthy, like event winning wise. I played in the Last Chance qualifier. Played 4 rounds of that, a couple pickup games, and a 3-round scrambler. I think I had some good games in there, but unfortunately that doesn't always on its own do it. So we'll maybe talk about that real quick. The War Machine Weekend Invitational. Congratulations to Brandon Andrews for his win in that, playing Scar 1 Dark Host and the Denagra Ghost Fleet list, mostly the Scar list. So looked like a pretty dominant set of games for him, actually. So our congratulations to him. But yeah, all in all, War Machine Weekend still a fun event. A lot of fun social opportunities, a lot of fun games, catching up with a lot of folks. I was able to pick up a few pre-releases. There's a stack of Wold Whites pretty much right over there, and some other stuff. I got a couple of things from Muse that I'd kind of been hoping to get, so that was cool. Chatted with quite a few folks. There was a lot of people in the Hobby Lounge. The one bit of news, I suppose, coming out of the convention was that for Circle was that we got to see the concept art mostly for the Warlock that we will be getting next, and her name is Iona the Unseen. And she is a female Tharn Warlock. If you go to the Facebook page, you should be able to pretty easily find the concept art. Doug posted it in a thread, and then another person reposted it so that you can find it. And she looks fantastic. I didn't get any information whatsoever on what she does. I think it's still quite a ways. Doug had just started that sculpt that week, and she was basically an hourglass with something of a face. So obviously, he's got some work to do on that, and that probably means that she's a bit off. A Warlock is generally going to be like resin metals, so that's in-house, so not as far off as something that was like in the like one of the 2 plastics necessarily. So in any case, she looks really cool. I'm really excited. She's got like the big Tharn headdress. She's got a big sword. She's got a battle claw similar to the Blood Trackers. And, it's pretty exciting stuff. I'll be pretty interested to see where, when we do get a CID and down the road, I would guess late spring, early summer, given our, maybe possibly slightly sooner, but I'm thinking given where they are on releases, we know Legion CID is going to be in January, from what they said on the last one-shot they did for Black Fleet. So if Legion's then, they're probably looking at no sooner, like they're probably getting releases in April, because we've already seen the February release schedule, and that contains none of the new Crix models. So the soonest we're going to start seeing the Legion models is April, and we know there's a Khador Manowar theme that we know is coming pretty soon too. So if that's in the May-June timeframe and the Legion stuff is in there, that means I'm guessing the next faction, the Crucible Guard faction, will drop at Lock and Load, and Circle maybe follows that. So it is going to be quite a ways for a full theme style CID. Obviously we don't know if there's going to be any other intermediate CIDs. Right now it doesn't. I would not expect that, but so we are still waiting. I was hoping that it would drop before this. We're still waiting the Wold changes that were in the previous CID. So that's the Guardian, the Warden, the Watcher, Bradigus, and the Stone Shaper. So we'll probably revisit that once we get it. I am hoping that it's this week, mostly because I want to play it in a tournament, a local tournament on Saturday. But if that doesn't happen, then we'll do something else. So that is sort of the best we have for news. I'm pretty excited for Tharn. That was what I had predicted. It was kind of what Privateer had really forecasted, and so now that's going to come to pass. So, in the meantime, I'll just talk real quick about what happened at War Machine Weekend, and then I did get a couple questions that I'll kind of try to talk to. So, War Machine Weekend, real quick. I played in, as I mentioned, I played in the Last Chance Qualifier. Honestly, by the way things shook out, I only played Una 2 all weekend, and that was mostly of my own design. So, in Game 1 of the LCQ, I got paired up against a Minions player. He had Rask and I think Caliban. He played Rask. It was in the Blindwater theme, so it was all sorts of posse. And honestly, I played a pretty solid game. I did make a couple small mistakes in priority a couple times, and ultimately the game, I was up on attrition, I was up on scenario, but I had one turn that I spent probably, I would guess, around 20 minutes on that turn, and probably killed 20 minutes worth of models. However, that did put me way behind on clock, and I needed about 30 more seconds to clear out three Gatorman Posse models and run Lanissa Russell into a zone, and time ran out as the Gatorman Tuft, so I would have needed to get one more attack on him probably and run Lanissa into the zone, and I should have had the resources to do that, but I did not have the time, so I lost that match. I felt pretty good about it. I feel like in a rematch that I have a pretty good idea what I need to do, how I need to play differently, and I can execute on that. So, and definitely got a lot of use out of everything. Just for reference, in case I'm pretty sure I talked about it, but the Una list I'm playing right now is essentially Una and Devourer's Host, a couple Tharn solos, Gallows Grove, Shifting Stone, 6 Birds, Gorax, and 2 units Wolf Riders. I know not everybody is fond of the Wolf Riders, but I'm finding that they're really fitting into that list in a way that works for me. So I'm going to continue with that, and that's part of the reason I tried to play so many games with them, was to get an idea of what I could and couldn't do with it. Sort of push my boundaries a little bit more with it than I have been. I'm pretty locked into the list. I might be making, if I make any tweaks, they'll be pretty small. I think the 6 Birds and the 2 units of Wolf Riders are fairly locked in, and the rest will be, maybe some minor juggling about of things. So anyways, it was at that point that I decided I was just going to continue to play Una, unless, frankly, it just looked abysmally bad, and even then I did it anyways. So round 2, I got paired up against, and apologies, I don't have my phone out, and names don't always come to me. So apologies for not mentioning names. All my opponents were fantastic throughout the whole weekend. Round 2, I got paired up against a gentleman playing Legion. He was playing an Absolute 2 list that was out of theme. And I'm forgetting the scenario, but I think it was Spread the Net. And the way the scenario played out, I went second and ended up really just swarming his flanks in a way that he couldn't recover from. And I ended up winning that game like 8-0 on scenario. So not a ton to talk about with that. It basically comes down to it came down to he was not terribly experienced with the matchup, and then I was just able to exploit it. Notable Wolf Riders, 4 Wolf Riders with Hand of Fate did kill a Spiny Growth Carnivian. So for those of you who are wondering what they do in the list, that's one of the things they do. Round 3, I got paired up against another Circle player, and he had I believe it was round 3 that this happened. Yes. And he had a Chromac 2 list and an Una 2 list. I had my Kruger 1 list and Una 2. And his Una 2 list was a little bit more of the traditional Devourer's Host. I think he had Blood Trackers, Blood Weavers, Ravagers. And then his Chromac list, which had like 5 heavies. Yeah, I think he technically had 5 heavies. He had a Feral. He had Getterix, Pureblood, Feral Stalker, Gnarlhorn, and then like Shifting Stones with the attachment, I think. And a Blackclad? Something like that. Looking at his list, I felt that the Cavalry gave me an edge into his Una 2, and I felt like my list in general out-threatened his Chromac 2. He sort of overthought it, thinking I was going to play Kruger 1, which I might have been able to play into that matchup because I think Ravagers do okay into Circle Heavies outside of Chromac's feat turn. And that's essentially how it was able to play out. He had to kind of commit a high, if you're used to playing Circle, some of our fairly expensive point costed Circle Beasts into, Wolf Riders or Scarsfells, and it doesn't take a ton of them to retaliate. So that's what I did and was successful in doing so. It was just sort of a game where he was going to have a hard time keeping on top of me, just with the type of list. I'll come back around to talking about Chromac 2. That was one of the questions we had. And I don't have a ton to say on him, but I'm going to talk about a few concerns I have and a few thoughts I have. So we'll come back to him. But so I won that game. The next game I played against was against Nemo 3, and I probably should have played Kruger 1. He had Nemo 3 and something else that I'm not recalling. I think it was Cray, and I sort of expected him, once I said I had Kruger 1, to play Cray, but he either calculated, and probably decently so, that Kruger can only keep so much infantry safe from lightning, even with his spell and whatnot, and the list was good in Una 2. And I set up this. I sort of like practiced seeing if this was possible. You can fit 8 of the 10 Wolf Riders into Windwall by basically like setting up sort of a V pattern where you ring 5 of them kind of around, and then you can sort of jam 3 in, and then by then you can put 2 behind that because of the block line of sight. And the rest has stealth, so I was like, except for the shifting stones and things like that. So I sort of like moved them away so he couldn't leap off of them, and then spread out the stealth models and stuff to retaliate. And then I apologized to my opponent for this because I was massively salty when he ran a Firefly like right into base with my guys, and I remembered that E-leaps are bullshit, and was very salty, and he killed quite a bit of stuff on his feat turn that turn. But I was actually able to recover. He killed a whole unit of Wolf Riders between Reliant Drifts, Firefly Jumps, and the Strider, and then I was able to, I think I feated that turn. I had to set up sort of a janky setup so that I could actually do damage to the Storm Strider. Was able to do that. Sort of kept killing stuff off, and at the end of the game it was like Una, the Gorax, and a Griffin, and the unit of Shifting Stones, I think. Maybe the Gelsgrove? Maybe? I don't remember. That might have been dead. Versus like Nemo and nothing. So at the end of the game, I didn't kill Nemo. I won on scenario, and I might have won on scenario on turn 7. I'm blanking, but I didn't kill Nemo. I didn't kill something else, but like there was like I killed 96 points and he killed like 94 points or something. So that was a grinder of a game. I would probably not drop Una into that list again, unless I literally had no better options. The E-leaps, the boosted E-leaps are just brutal into the lightly armored high defense stuff. So I do have some plans for if I have to deal with Nemo 3 that mostly that sound in the Bones of Orboros direction, but we'll see. So that ended the LCQ. I went 3-1. I wasn't really happy losing that first round. Overall, I was mostly happy with my play. Like I said, I learned something in that first game, and also was really in a driver's seat. So I just needed to sort of cut out those small priority errors and play just a little bit faster, and I'll be okay there. And then the rest, like winning that game against Nemo, felt pretty good. Later that night, I played a pickup game against Cray with my same list, and so my opponent doesn't play a ton of games, I would say. So, but what I did learn there is if you're going to play Una into that, you're going to need to play a very cagey game, where because that particular list had 2 Stormclads in it, and Stormclads with the spell that he can cast can go, they get +3 speed for a charge, so they go from 5 to 8, then they go to 11, and so ultimately they threaten 13 inches, and so do your cavalry. So you kind of want to play Mirage very carefully in that situation, as well as Hunter's Mark, which I had in the list. I think Hunter's Mark will give you the edge there because Lanissa hitting is not that unlikely in that scenario. If you are playing Una like in the Call of the Wild, the Black Clads are going to be phenomenally helpful. And again, had to do some janky stuff to actually get on the Fulcrum. So ended up winning that game after sort of figuring out where I needed to go, getting my feet to get the alpha, and everything was okay. Centurion was still a pain to kill, of course, but we got there eventually. So that was it for Friday. On Saturday, there was a Super Scrambler. I decided to play the Una list because I wanted to practice with it. I thought it was 2 lists, but it was not. It was 1. Played into Kane 1, Sons of the Tempest by Richard Potter, who was actually in the Invitational. And that game was pretty rough for that list as well. He has ways of removing stealth, it was Kane 1, double cav, double solo that has flare, Black 13th, and then some jacks. I think it was 2 hunters and a defender, and ace. And again, pretty accurate attacks, and on Anastasia Debray. Pretty accurate attacks that hit hard enough. You get a lot of boosted 10s out of the Cav, for example, and that out-threaten me. Snipe and everything pretty reliably. It's rough for me to deal with, and Deadeye makes them ungodly accurate. So not a good matchup. I lost quite a bit of stuff on the approach. I actually started to pull even with the game. I was able to kill his heavies off. I was having a hard time getting to his cavalry, though. My cavalry was out-threatened by his, because at the very least because of snipe. Blur was also very not helpful for me because I didn't have a great way to hit that really high defense. Defense 18, range attacks, not great, and having trouble getting charges. I did actually get to a situation where I had the ability to pull ahead in the game, and I needed my Tharn Ravager Shaman to... I think he needed to hit a boosted 8. I think that was what it was. Or the damage roll didn't roll 5. It was one of the two, and I didn't kill Anastasia Ray, which meant I didn't clear the flag he was standing on, which meant I couldn't score that, which meant I didn't have the... I could have won potentially by getting 4 points that turn, or 3, and then making it difficult for him to get over into the zone I was in. So didn't manage that. He's able eventually to sort of grind out enough of a win, and I couldn't win that. Again, not really the ideal drop here. After that, I played against a guy who's actually local to me, playing the Coven, which I felt in the pretty standard Dark Host list, except he was running Dara Wraith instead of the Battle Engine, and then I think he had a couple other solos as a result. And this game ended up being pretty short. He blanked on or was not familiar with Una's feat, I went first and I ran pretty aggressively up the table, which forced him into feeding immediately. But he put Egregore 9 inches from 2 of my Griffins and left a landing spot for a third, and did not camp his full stack. So even if he camps his full stack, it's pretty reliable with 2 Griffins, with flank, with one with Hand of Fate, one both with Primal. It didn't go to the second one though, so that was a pretty easy win. I think I still like that matchup just fine. I take a lot of table space. He kind of tries to take it back with the feet, and then I kind of take what I can get on his feet turn and back up, or just play safely, or make try to not give him too much. And I think the problem is after that I have threat range advantage pretty much everywhere. I can use which I can use to my advantage. I can kind of kite around a lot of stuff with the Wolf Riders. Game 3. What am I playing game 3? Oh, game 3 was against one of the guys over on Arcane Assist, another YouTube channel. I definitely recommend checking out. Their battle reports are fantastic. And he was trying out Jalam from Scorn, and this one played out in my advantage because he set up. I think it was second this time. He kind of jammed into me with cats. He then hit like a bunker for his caster to be way up the table, and I was pretty sure he was going to feat, and he goes to activate a model, and I was like, did you forget anything? And he's like, nope. I'm like, sure? And he's like, yeah. And then he keeps activating, and like a couple seconds later, he's like, oh, I was supposed to feat, wasn't I? I was like, yeah, I asked you about it. So he's like, okay, well, let's see what happens. And what happened was I killed pretty much everything, which I would have had to be. I think I can still do some work through his feat if that's the situation, but obviously not nearly enough with one less die to hit. I have to really aggressively use like Primal and Flank to get stuff off, and things like that. So nonetheless, that's how that went down. So it turns out Una 2 can kill late some standard scoring stuff pretty easily, and that just trickled in my favor. So won that game. And one more pickup game later was against Denegra 1, playing in the Statixis theme. That was a grinder that I ended up pulling out at the end. It was like Denegra and a single Blood Hag, and the rest was dead stuff. So it felt good. I had to play pretty cagey to get through that. He's a good opponent, good fella named Chris from the St. Louis area. So those were my games. Then I played some Watch Machine and some Hangout Machine and whatever. So that's War Machine Weekend. Always a good show. Thanks to Carl and the crew for putting on everything. Had a lot of fun. Probably be back next year. Yeah. All right. So we don't have. I'm not gonna. There's kind of two things. I threw out some questions from earlier, and I do want to talk about them because I think they're interesting. And then also really quick, we did get the Wold White. Was pre-released there, so those are in the wild now. We have the wonderful. Oh, this isn't going to show up because it's green, but this is a full out card. So I'm just going to talk through it real quick. We talked about it before it was in CID. It didn't change a whole lot, but we'll just breeze through this, and then I'm going to go to some of those questions. So the Wold White is still a Circle 8 beast. Still Fury 2 with no threshold like all Wolds. 14 boxes spread pretty evenly. It is Speed 6, Strength 6, Mat 5, Defense 12, Armor 15. It is 5 points and still FAU. It is a Construct Pathfinder and on a medium base. And then its melee attack is Lanterns, which is still range 1, power and strength 10 with continuous fire. His Animus is still Spontaneous Combustion, which costs 1 range self, lasts for a turn. Spellcaster models within 2 inches of it immediately suffer continuous fire. And then it additionally has Fire's Fury, which is the rule in the Fire Eaters, but this model gains +5 armor against fire damage. While suffering continuous fire, the model cannot become knocked down, gains boosted attack and damage rolls. And then, of course, it's a shield guard, which I don't need to go into the details on. So, It's still a solid model. We talked about it before. The one change, I believe it was defense 13 in the CID. It's defense 12 now in any case. Slight tune down. I think it's most compelling in places where you can amp its damage up. So Bradigus, by far the best caster for it, in my opinion. It felt pretty strong when I was playing it with him. You can get them up to power 15 on with the new Stone Shaper changes that we're expecting, assuming those happen. And Synergy. It's also great for starting Synergy. It can cast Animus for free, which is great. Shield Guards, which is great. One of the things that they and the Pharaoh Valkyries, which is another point somebody brought up, and we'll sort of talk to them in a second as well, are good for is that they're relatively cheap shield guards. These are probably the better one to take with Bradigus. Valkyries maybe in some other lists, depending. And that's good. So that's going to be a thing, but these also provide a lot of offensive output. And with Bradigus, frankly, you can actually get more damage out on infantry than you would think by using the Animus, which is free. So overall, I think it's a 5-point beast, so don't be expecting the world of it. And I've seen a lot of people are like, I feel like it's kind of crappy. It has a place, and you're gonna kind of have to evaluate what that looks like. Bradigus is the most obvious place. I know Pagani mentioned he liked him with Kaya 3, actually. I'm assuming still getting that synergy bonus, but getting like the feat and the reposition 3, which sort of lets you get maybe more of them on a target. Was pretty good. I like them much better with Bradigus. I think if I'm playing Kai 3, I'm sort of looking for something different personally, but obviously, Will's always been a good player, and if he's finding success, there's probably something there. And I think any Bones list that you're looking at, or anyone who really needs a shield guard in Secret Masters or Call of the Wild, nope, not that one, Wild Hunt, will also want to look into them. So I would say worth picking up. I don't think spamming 15 of them is going to be good. I do think that playing more than one of them will be best most of the time. If you just need like one shield guard, I think it's pretty good. Or it's most of the time going to be pretty good if you're in one of the themes that can allow. So I think it's a good piece. Don't look for it to be. There's a reason why they didn't want shield guard on the Wold Watcher, and that's because it's just far too durable and does too many other things. And so I think getting it on this piece is actually pretty good. So we'll see, more to come on that. We'll see if I find lists that I'm playing it in and sort of what goes on with everything. So and then this was one of the questions I got, as well as something I just kind of brought up, which was the Pharaoh Valkyries. And I sort of initially just sort of waved my hands past them when I saw them in the CID, didn't test them at all. And looking at it now, they are multi-wound models with shield guard, gang, vengeance, and they have a gun. So definitely not something that you want to ignore. And basically, if you have the spot in your list for if you have a spot in your list for a unit, a minion unit still, which all of our themes allow, this is definitely going to be something to consider. Now, I don't necessarily think you could do it in Secret Masters, but I think if you're doing it there, you're going to want to be doing it for other bonus reasons in that list. But in general, the fact that you can bring it in any of the other 4, I think is very, very strong. Some lists just really want a shield guard. It also enables a few things that it didn't before. So like Chromac 1 definitely likes shield guards, and we were sort of debating taking the Ogre Invoker a lot even before this, and you may still want to if you need only a solo. But being able to take this means you might be able to keep some of those pieces safe that you weren't otherwise able to. You can also do things like the Wold Wardens, which we're expecting changes for. You can actually get use out of their Animus now, because you can step, you can maybe use 2 or 3 Wardens, put out your forests, put the Valkyries behind them, and now you're spreading out that damage that would be going to the wardens through these 8-point models, and then you can block line of sight to approach up the table in some of those cases, or just keep your caster safe. I think the Wold Whites fill a similar role to that as well. So it really depends on how many shield guards you feel like you need, or and if shield guard is more important than some of the offensive output or the fire damage. That's sort of when I would start looking at Valkyries. They're also a unit rather than beasts, so if you're kind of needing another unit in your list, they're going to be another piece to consider for that reason. And also they're going to be decent enough in melee. They're POW 10 with 2-inch melee, gang. They have a range 8 POW 12 cannon at rat, I think 5. Or actually I think it's rat 6. So, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at either. Range 8 is not fantastic, but again, like, they're going to get some surprising threat when you need them to. They're going to be able to score unit zones, which is nice, and they bring 3 shield guards with Vengeance, so it's pretty easy to trigger it. And unless your opponent doesn't want to shoot you, then you're like, great. Also means their threat range. I think they're speed 5, so 5, 8, 10, and then they go up to 13 with Vengeance. Overall, definitely a unit that I'm going to be giving some consideration to. I picked up a unit of them as well at War Machine Weekend, so something to consider there. Okay, and then so let me roll into some of the questions that a fellow posted in the Circle group, and I'm going to sort of try to address them more or less all of them, because I think they're interesting questions, and I think it would be interesting topics of conversation sort of on this week, where we spent a lot on War Machine Weekend already. So the first question has to do with Chromac 2, and it's how do you initiate peace trading with Chromac 2 list? Still haven't figured it out. Either just hang back and get shot, or move forward and take the charge. So I want to step back and talk about Chromac 2. I talked about my game against him there a little bit. And one of the things, one of the unfortunate realities that I'm seeing for Chromac 2 is his threat range is very lacking. You are going to be pretty reliant on either giving up a piece or hitting your hunter's mark. And the reason for that is that he has no threat range extension of his own, right? He's hoping to bring these beasts that Circle's native decent speed can account for, and you can bully the table after that. So what do you do then? If you're playing so I think there's I personally think I've strayed away from Chromac and Kaya 3, which we'll talk about in a second, into the Una direction, because I like the threat range. If you're not going to play with the threat range advantage that is inherent in something like Una 2, you're going to need to think about how you approach your game differently. So one option is you could play Chromac. The first one I theorized was you can play Chromac 2 actually in Devourer's Host, where you could take either a unit of Blood Trackers, some Blood Weavers, some Ravagers, something like that, and now you can basically just throw those up the table, make your opponent deal with them, or just put them in awkward places so that their activations are going to be screwed up, and then you can hopefully get in there with your Beast behind that and your Chromac, feet, kill stuff. You can also just choose your battles, right? Don't drop it into something that out-threatens you. Or that you can't take advantage of the fact that you out-threaten natively, right? So for example, if you're bringing it as like a Khador armor brick answer, although I'm seeing less and less and less of those, but let's just say that's what we're talking about, then even with Harkovich, the farthest the Jack's threaten is 10, and you should have things like Chromac, Stalkers, Getorix that all threaten they all threaten 11. So you're going to want to play that game, right? The other thing is look for ways to abuse the terrain. And also the other thing is you sort of want to set it up where you're denying, you kind of want to bully an area as much as you can with that. Sort of use your battle group, bully the area, put it in a place where, like, yes, they're not going to be able, they're going to want to spread out. You're going to want to make it, and makes it harder with this scenario packet, but like you want to do something where you can utilize as much of your battle group as you can, and then you also want to be using things like Lightning Strike on Stalkers and on Chromac himself to make sure you're staying safe. You could also, and this applies to Kai 3 as well, you can also try, and I think this is incredibly difficult, and I have not practiced it, so I cannot say this will be successful. You could try to play some Gnarlhorns and work with counter slams to sort of disincentivize charges. That can work. If you are playing him into a bunch of guns, look at the table and see if there are safe places you can help adjust that, and also consider just feeding defensively. All of a sudden, your thing's going up to armor 21 for Getorix. You can go to 21 with things like Rip Horns. You can go, you go even up to 19, defense 14, armor 19 for your Stalkers. Purebloods, Feral goes up to 20. Like, these are all things that will help you get across the table. Doesn't mean you will, but that's the type of thing you want to consider. And also look at at hyper aggressive. Be very careful with when you use it. Sometimes it does actually make sense to approach, and sometimes it does not. Make sure you're not just giving a free heavy up. But that's kind of where I feel with that. I have not played enough Chromac 2 to really say a ton more than that, but that's in theory land where it would be. And then the follow-up comment is Kaya 3 seems to step on Chromac's shoes a bit. Seems Kaya 3 comes out ahead because she's more resilient to shooting. She's more resilient to shooting, kinda. So she's going to have Fog of War and +2 defense. So anything that can knock down or is highly accurate is going to be better to be playing Chromac. Well, not necessarily for the knockdown, but in general, you want low power, high accurate shooting is going to hurt Kaya's army less than it hurts Chromac's, or hurt Kaya's army more than it hurts Chromac's, and vice versa. So if they have some very inaccurate but high damage, Kaya 3 is going to be better. Otherwise, Chromac's going to be better. They both can bully a little bit. I think Chromac bullies a little harder, personally. Synergy. The final thing too is synergy requires you to actually set it up, and that can at times also be problematic, because you need something that can go out there and start the synergy chain, and then late in the game, if you don't have that, you could potentially be in a rough spot. Chromac always has Carnage, and you can choose with his feet everything's going to get that bonus, not just the things at the end of the synergy chain or not after you've arranged hits. So that's something to consider. Jumping back to Chromac 2, and this can apply to Kai 3 as well. Consider also, if you're having a lot of trouble with threat ranges, Shadowhorn Satyrs can be fantastic in that case, because they can walk 6, jump 5, and have 1-inch melee. And you can use that 1-inch melee to throw. So now hopefully the model you're trading is the Shadowhorn and not your expensive heavy like Getorix or Chromac himself even. And then with the feet, and if you have to primal, you can get a pretty substantial throw out there. You can also use it to soften up if you're decently sure you're going to hit. You can use the chain attack pitch instead of just straight up power attacking. So, but be careful with that, because you may miss or whatever. So those are the things that I would consider with Chromac and with Kaya, really. I think Kaya is going to play a little bit more with lights. Chromac can, but I think he's going to play a little better with heavies. I think Rip Horns play a little better with Chromac 2 because of buffing their armor. I think you wouldn't play something like Getorix, in my opinion, with Kaya 3, because you just don't need that many points in one package. But I do really like Stalkers with her. I like Gnarlhorns with her. I like Shadowhorns with her. Griffins, Arguses, the Gorax for primal. Another thing to keep in mind, Ferals can warp for speed, which makes them a 12-inch threat on a charge. And sometimes that's going to be enough, especially, again, if you need something dead. You have Chromac's feet, you have synergy, you have primal, things like that. The warp speed actually can help you bridge that gap. If you don't need the uber armor cracking. So into something like Legion that threatens farther, for example. Just another piece to consider there. The next question is who runs Bones of Orboros better, Wormwood or Kruger 2? Dealer's choice. I think Bones of Orboros is a pretty compelling theme with a few casters. I'm looking at Kruger 2, but I think a lot of other people have talked to me about Wormwood, and I can certainly see how that would be beneficial. You're looking at very different lists, moderately different lists. Stranglehold is a spell you're looking to abuse with Wormwood. With Kruger, you've got actually 3 spells between Gallows, TK, and Lightning Storm. So you're going to have a little bit different types of drops you're looking for, different answers, and so forth. But I think they're both strong. I don't think there's like one's better than the other. Look at what you prefer to play. They both sort of position and play very differently on the table. So, in addition, Bones, I think Bradigus is a caster again to take note of and play, especially if you're looking for more of an armor cracking list. I think the Wolds also either Balder would love to give that a go. There might be something weird with. I don't think I'd play with Kruger 1 because he wants to skew defense for Gale Winds. But you could get a lot of Chain Lightnings out. You think? I don't like it. I know some people like to play Bones with Chromac 1 and 2. I don't like it personally. You could do it with Tanith. She's a pretty all-around caster. I think some of the things I mentioned you can do with her and it'd be good. Obviously, you don't want to do it with Una. What else we had? You could do it with Kaya 3. I just think it's better with Bradigus, personally. I don't think I would do it with Grail. I don't think I would do it with any of the other Kayas. I don't think I would look into that with either of the Morvanas. Mosar's compelling potentially. You are almost certainly losing out on Sands of Fate is your only thing to consider there, but I don't think that means that he's unplayable in that theme. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for Bones with the changes coming. And the other question had to do with Pharaoh Valkyries. I agree. I do think they look pretty sweet for Circle because of the reasons I gave. So in general, whatever I think right now, something to keep in mind is if you're playing Circle, you're really going to need to be thinking about your matchup a lot more. We're not like at the top of the meta by most people's consideration right now, and we don't really have any lists that are just like, I'm going to play this and people are going to quiver at it, whether they should or not. That's just not the attitude they're going to have. And I think that you're going to really need to know what to do with your list, when to drop it, and how to play it, more than we've had to in the past, right? Like, I don't think you're really going to drop. So I mentioned Bradigus being good. Like, you're not going to drop him, though, and just have people go, I don't know what to do here. They're not necessarily going to. I'm not saying that they're going to be so familiar with the match that you don't have some advantage. But it's not like it's not a list that asks, it's not a gear check list anymore. It's not, the 8 Wold Watchers, and it's where it's like, well, good luck killing these, right? You could do that, by the way, if you really want. Or say 7 or 8. But I don't think you're going to have that situation. Una 2 asks some questions, but it's more about you being able to play the list. It's a higher execution list. Wormwood, Kruger 2 are obviously going to go in that direction as well. Kruger 2 is probably the closest because some people are going to be like, I'm so screwed on scenario, and you may get some advantage from that. But so that's sort of my thoughts on that. Where Circle is in the meta right now is going to depend. We're seeing a lot of changes right now to Crix in their CID. We don't know when those are come out. I am looking forward to the Blindwater CID as well. The Spiny Growth change is very important for Chromac and Getorix. I don't recommend playing either. I would say you want to have a good reason not to play Getorix if you're playing either Chromac. But Spiny Growth going to 1 is very, very key, especially in the Call to Wild list. And let me jump back to that real quick. I wanted to talk about that with Kaya and Chromac. Part of the reason I'm less certain about that theme personally is that with SR 2017, you really do need to be able to meaningfully contest in multiple places. And ideally be able to score in multiple places as well. And I think that theme makes it very difficult for us to do that in a lot of regards. Now, Chromac is Fury 7, something I didn't mention, but that's an advantage for him because he can actually cover more table space with his battle group. But you really want to be taking, I would really be looking at like spread the net, especially spread the net, to see what strategy you feel you need to have to actually be able to put your army in a place to successfully be able to not lose on scenario, basically. That's going to be really key. Kaya 3 has very much a similar problem in that theme, which is she doesn't want people outside of her controller of 12 inches, and we don't have anything with long leash anymore, so you're really going to be needing to look into that. You may need to be supplementing with like a minion unit, a minion solos, etc., to try to, you know, still be okay with those type of things. And on that, I also would not... I would currently recommend don't over-rely on things like Gremlin Swarms. The meta is absolutely preparing for them. Everybody knows that that's what Grimkin are going to be playing, and there's a lot of magic weapons out there to deal with things like Ghost Fleet. So I would not, and Crix in general, I would not have an over-reliance on things like Gremlin Swarms to hold a zone for you right now. I think they're good at it, but I think right now they're not the best. I'm considering things more... if I was going to go that route, I would start considering things like ambush models, like the Bogtrog Trawler, the Gatorman Husk that's coming out, even Hutchuck if you've got the points for him, or something like the Totem Hunter, which has stealth and is able to flank pretty hard, things like that. So if you need a piece like that, I would look in that direction. Trying to think if there are anything else. Double check my chat to see if anybody threw a question out there. I do have a comment. E-leaps suck unless you get to do them. Then they're great. But yeah, overall, I would say with Circle, make sure you're really thinking about your matchups and what you want to play. I'll be very interested to hear too what the future holds for champions. What we're going to be getting. At this point, there's no real competitive events for me until, like, high competitive events for me until ATC in January. But after that, like, Adepticon will be around the corner and some other stuff. And I'm very interested to see where the Champions format goes and, like, what we see on ADR. I suspect we may continue just to see Tanith every cycle. That might just be a thing that they've intended to do so that new players always have at least one option into Champions. But we'll see. We haven't had anything new caster-wise since Kaya 3. And she's now been on there, so I don't really know where we're going to go. I think we have a few options. We've had... Let me think about this. We've had 3 cycles since Mark 3 began. We had, the very beginning was Tanith, Kaya 1, Kruger 1, and Balder 1. And from there we went to Tanith, Una 2, I think it was Mosar and Bradigus, I think. And then we got, Una 2 was replaced by Kaya 3, Mosar was replaced by Morvana 1. So we will see. I really am interested to see where that format goes, though, because I really like. I'm sort of honing in my 2 lists that I like for like the master style events, and having a reason to play some other lists and sort of logic through that is now very compelling to me. So, yeah. That's about all I had for this week. Went actually even a little longer than I thought I might be able to, but that's good. As always, it was great seeing the Muse guys. I am grateful they keep letting me put videos up on their website. I may be behind 1 or 2. I'll try to get this one up this week. Also, big shout out to Griffin's Roost Painting. So my wife actually took home the best painted Grimkin model. Really cool Dreamer model. And if you're interested in high-end or display quality models, check out Griffin's Roost Painting on Facebook or her website, griffinsroostpainting.com. And yeah, so hopefully be back next week. We will talk about something. And until then, have a good one.